What's going on, FAU fans? Welcome to Inside the Burrow, the first FAU fan podcast. I am Kevin Fielder, your host, joined by two familiar faces in Richard Pereira and JJ Metz, and a face that's becoming a little more familiar, I guess, in FAU circles. New FAU men's basketball coach, John Jakus. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's just get started. I think you've been in this job for about a month now,
Yeah.
give or take a few days. And, how are you adjusting to South Florida? I know that during your introductory press conference, you mentioned that you had been in South Florida before. You're sort of familiar with the area. And how is your family sort of adjusting to this new, I guess, reality of being the head coach of a Division I men's basketball program?
Yeah, I have been here before. My cousin grew up here, and she actually went to St. Andrews and played golf there. And then she's actually a grad of FAU. And we came up here going on vacation and obviously love Boca and love the place. I think you probably heard it in the press conference, but my hope was to retire here. So if Brian was going to bring me here 20 years earlier, then I'll just say yes and go ahead and come early. And for me, this is always kind of a spot that I targeted not only to live, but to coach. So we passed up some other head coaching jobs and we got this one or a chance to interview for it. We took it for sure. And I pretty much go from the hotel to the gym and back for the first 14 days. And then for the last 14 days, we've got a house, an Airbnb on the Intercoastal. And we call it the frat house because the whole staff lives there without their wives, and we cook and clean and hang out and do our recruiting from either the office or there. So I've been to the beach, I think, in a total of 3 times, twice on recruit meals, and once I saw my cousin. And I don't know that I've fully, I guess, enjoyed all of the things in Boca yet, but I'm going to get there once the roster's done.
I do have to ask real quick, which coach is the best cook on staff? Which one is cooking most of the meals
The most meals is
this house?
Isaiah. He's the most faithful. Isaiah Austin's a 7-1 chef. He's a genius. We had a fundraiser last night that JJ was at. That was awesome. And we came home and Isaiah cooked a meal for me just out of the kindness of his heart. I'd say the best chef is Coach AD. And Coach AD is the one who left the Phoenix Suns and has been around a little bit. But, man, he cooked steak the other night. It's as good as any steak you'll get at any fine restaurant that you'll find. So blew us away. And as far as my family goes, my wife and daughter are coming here tonight at 10:45 so she can look at some schools and some houses. But I've seen them once in the last month. So probably the greatest gift is not the food, but seeing those two tonight.
Coach, really appreciate you coming on. I mean, you got a couple internationally guys to recruit. How would you describe your approach in evaluating and identifying talent locally, nationally, and internationally for recruits to come to FAU?
Yeah, I mean, I coached professionally overseas and did a bunch of work with an organization called Athletes in Action. It's been kind of all around the world. And when I was doing that, I wasn't doing it so I could build relationships for recruiting. I was just doing it because I thought I'd coach there kind of forever. So in an odd way, it's kind of helped me set up. And some of my closest friends are the agents or NBA scouts that live overseas and, scout internationally. So they are the first touch point. They I think love us, our staff and me enough to tell us which the good ones are. And then I don't think that location really matters, whether they're from America or Africa or Europe. I don't think that's really the way we make our decisions. It's just how we get our first touch points. Our decisions are still the same. Like we're going to have 5 or 6 guys that can shoot around 40% from 3. I think if you look at our recruiting so far, you can see that. We're going to have 2 point guards. 13 of the last 15 national champions have started 2 point guards. And then you're going to see wingspan all over. If you look at our recruiting, we got a bunch of guys between 6'5" and 6'8" with 7+ foot wingspans. And we're going to be very switchable, and it's going to matter on defense. And we're going to be able to play traditional defense with a roller, and then we're going to be able to play some small ball death lineups where we switch everything and then just get after people. So I think the positional size, who they defend, their wingspan, the ability to make a 3 and enough ball handling, we're filling boxes in a very NBA front office kind of manner. And I know Twitter's cool and rankings are great, and we've signed 3 4-star kids for the first time in FAU history. But for us, it's not about that. It's about finding the fit and the positional size and length of what the NBA is looking for.
Hey, Coach. To have you on here today. I know the first time I talked to you was at the introductory press conference when it came to recruiting, and given the importance of player retention in college basketball, especially with the transfer portal, NIL being intertwined with one another, with players looking for the best situation that they can find. How do you plan on being strong relationships with your players to ensure that they stay committed to the program beyond their freshman year and onward?
Yeah, there's a little echo in there, but I think I know what you're getting at. And retention's a big piece. When we were at Gonzaga and then also at Baylor, we were able to keep guys. And, I knew coming in there was a small chance that we'd keep guys. Just people are addicted to the portal anyway. And then when there's a coaching change, they're also just going to look for new places. So we knew we'd have to sign 9 or 10 this year, at least 7 or 8, we thought for sure. But our goal is to keep the guys that we have, and that's what we've always done at Gonzaga and Baylor. And I think the main reason is our player development, and they believe there's a plan. And a lot of the guys that made the NBA for us at these places were one and done, but just as much of them were transfers or guys that were in school 3, 4, or 5 years. And you get really good when you get guys to stay within your program, the retention rate. So it's not our fault that Dusty switched jobs. We clearly have to start over. He was a great coach. He did a great job here. And our target is to have good relationships with agents and parents and players to the point where when we get to the spring, they understand our long-term player development plan for them. And then they just love this place. And it's one of the reasons we wanted to come. I mean, if the fans sell out, the environment is real, you can win, and your coaches love you, and you're less than 2 miles from the beach, and the odds are you're going to stay. And I thought it was unique that Dusty got those guys to stay and run it back. We were able to do that at Baylor and Gonzaga and on 2 different occasions and make Final Fours because of it. So if they've done it here in the past, I think we'll just keep doing what we've done at Baylor and Gonzaga. It'll be just fine.
Coach, I do want to follow up on that real quick. I was speaking to Tim Maloney at your introductory press conference, and first of all, hilarious guy. He is one of the funniest people I think I have ever met. But
just don't tell him that, because he thinks the same thing about himself. So you probably just
I'm actually going to send this to him afterwards, so he will hear. No, when I was speaking to him, he had sort of mentioned that you are, I guess not a mix of Scott Drew and Mark Few, but you do have sort of learned from both of them. How much does that help you in terms of this transition and retaining players, for FAU?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott's coaching tree is one of the best. And then Mark's, obviously, you have Tommy Lloyd and what he did at Arizona. I mean, his first year, he was National Coach of the Year. So I think when it comes to the coaching tree, you see these guys take over programs, and why are they able to consistently be successful? And I think it's because you learn the way to not only schedule and recruit and fundraise and lead a program and trust your staff and hire the right people and then bring in the right players and how to build a roster. And you learn that. And so I feel like, I mean, if you're going to go to class, you might as well go to class for the last decade with 2 Hall of Famers. And it's a real privilege. And this thing is hard. I mean, the portal 5 years ago, this was not the same sport. And so to take over a program today and to have them as a reference point, and then to see the other guys in our coaching tree be so successful, I think it gives us a confidence that we can be patient. We can just sit in the background and use our analytics and film to make good choices. And then the right people are going to be attracted to good people. So as long as we're good people, we're going to keep attracting good people. And I watch them live their life that way. And it's more about than just basketball. It's about how you live your life and then who does life with you. And I had 2 of the best examples, and the coaching tree's been blessed because of that. And I hope the same thing will happen here.
And then just real quick, what has sort of been the biggest, or I guess the toughest thing about this transition from assistant coach, doing sort of, I guess, not the odd jobs, but, a little bit of everything to becoming the head coach and having to build the roster and, worry about hiring a staff? Sort of what has been the toughest part of that transition for you?
Yeah, I think the toughest part is not seeing my family. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate how crazy that part is, to know that for 8 to 10 weeks, you're just not going to be together. I would say one thing that people would probably say is tough is staff and building an identity. I don't think that we've had that issue. I think our coaching trio, we've got hundreds of really successful people at the NBA and collegiate level. So once they started walking in the office every day, I felt better. The loneliness that first week is probably more real than I thought it would be, or more real than people understand. But as each additional staff member showed up, it just got better and better, and it just felt like home. So I would say once you get over that, then it just comes down to, can you stick to your plans and not overreact? And then each day, you know that a problem is going to happen. And when the problem happens, can you be gracious, not take it personal, try to sleep through the night, even though you can't and it's rough, and then get up and try again. And as long as you can be gracious and not take things personal, you're going to be fine, especially when the people around you love you. But I think no family and wait for the staff to come was the most difficult things. But we're set now, and eventually my family will be here, so I think it'll be great.
Yeah, definitely a very hard transition, not seeing your family. Like, what will a typical week look like for you guys until the season starts? And when do you start practicing? And like, how many days a week will there be practices and, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think that, when you take over a program, you want to kind of prove yourself, but I don't think that that's the best way to go about your summer. And so we're going to run our summer just like we ran our summer at Gonzaga and Baylor. And June is the first week of June, we'll start workouts. It'll be really driven by our strength coach, conditioning, making sure they're healthy. And then the month will be filled with player development, because as good as the players are, the very best thing you can do is help them get better. And if your job as a coach is not just to use them in a game, it's to get them better prior and for them to understand the system. So June's going to be heavy player development. That's one of the reasons I hired such good NBA guys and player development guys, because that's going to matter. In July, we'll start to introduce our system for the month, and maybe a little less weights, but they'll still be lifting. The offensive and defensive principles, they'll get in place, and then we'll still layer that with some player development. And then in August, they'll get a little break to go home and come back. In September, we'll hit the road running. But we're not going to crush them in June to try to prove that we're a good staff. We're going to actually be patient and make them the best players they can be. And then in the right time, we'll start laying that other stuff on top of it. But I think it'll be 4 days a week in June, and sometimes 5, depending on how we use the hours and camp and things like that. But for the most part, we'll just use the hours the NCAA allows, and we'll help them get better. And that'll start the first week of June.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be very fun, Coach. Scheduling going to be a very big part for the upcoming season. Yeah. We have 5 games confirmed, 3 in the Charleston Classic and 2 in the Field of 68, also taking place in Charleston. Yeah. How would you describe the process of getting teams from certain conferences, aka Power 5 teams, to agree to contracts for those matchups so far, and have there been squads from those conferences who are interested in?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff's already in place, so it's more than just the Field of 68 and the College of Charleston Classic that's run by ESPN. The Field of 68 is set with Liberty and College of Charleston, and then 6 of the schools in the Charleston Classic have already been chosen by ESPN, and they're all, I would consider high major programs, and it's a great league. It's a chance for us to get quad 1 wins, or a great tournament. And then the FIU return game and Florida Gulf Coast return game have also been scheduled. So, I mean, you're coming in with over half of your 9 conference games handed to you. So for us, we're trying to schedule wisely. We've got to make sure that we have enough opportunities for quad 1 wins, or at least wins against the field, because wins against the NCAA tournament is how you get in. And then when you play, quad 3 or 4 teams, you got to make sure you win by enough points because of the way they weigh offensive and defensive efficiencies. And then you got to just understand the net and the way that it works. And then the hope is that the league, the American League, becomes a multi-bid league, because then there's available quad 1 wins in the league, and then you can help each other advance to the tournament with the depth of the league. So we're actually rooting for our league. We think it's a great league, great opportunity for us to have more than a couple teams in this year. But our responsibility is make sure our schedule before Christmas is hard enough that we can help the weight of the conference afterwards. So some of that's just been handed to us, but the 6 games we have left, we'll play with the math, and we'll get it there.
Coach, I think that, coming from Baylor is such a unique thing because that coaching staff has produced quite a few collegiate head coaches, especially across the Big 12 with, Grant McCasland at Texas Tech and Jerome Tang at Kansas State. What's the biggest thing that I guess you've learned from them and learned from yourself learned about yourself, in regards to this transition from assistant coach to head coach and running your own program?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my friendship with them is probably the number one thing. You spend more time with your staffs and your players than you do your family sometimes. So they are my family. I'd say the second thing is winning the national championship with Coach Tang was an absolute gift. Like, you'll never, ever be not linked historically. I mean, we're the first team to ever win a national championship and go to a Final Four for Baylor. So the friendships are unbelievable. Grant's wife is one of my wife's best friends. So they talk like 6 or 7 days a week. And I think they help each other through that process. And the reason I got the Gonzaga job is because Grant called Tommy Lloyd. So Grant in some ways saved my career and gave me a connection to Gonzaga, and the international recruiting and the offensive stuff they do there was an absolute gift. So, I would say Grant stepped in our life and almost changed it as much or more than anybody I've ever met. And then Tang won a championship with me and Scott and Alvin and the whole group. And that championship is probably another reason why I'm sitting here. So the only reason you get stuff like this is because the people that you surrounded yourself with. So this show is almost a gift from them to me because we were so successful together and the way that they helped me. And that's what we want our coaching tree to do. We want to help these 6 guys here, and we want to help Jerome's staff at K-State and Grant's staff at Texas Tech, and even Scott's staff at Baylor, even his brother's staff at Grand Canyon. We want to help each other rise up the business. And the greatest gift that Jerome and Grant gave me is the ability to get this job. And I'll be forever grateful for our friendship. And the coolest thing is I'm no longer in the Big 12 with Tommy Lloyd and Grant and Jerome and Scott. So I can just sit here and while I'm scouting, watch them on TV and watch them beat the heck out of each other and not have to be in the middle of that. So that I'm kind of thankful for. I can just root for all of them and be a good friend. But they changed my life forever, and I love them for it.
You mentioned last night that you hired a staff fully of offensive-minded, like with a lot of offensive-minded guys, with 2 former college players in Isaiah Austin and Coach Austin and Coach Abernathy. And you said you expect for FAU to score 100 points in some games. And you also mentioned at the introductory press conference that no one is going to play harder on defense than FAU. No team in the country is going to play harder on defense than FAU. When you pair those two together, it sets up for a very, very good team. What are your expectations going into next year?
Yeah, I think we expect to win, and I think more than anything, I think we expect to just have really, really good days this summer. And we've got to establish some standards. And those standards come from your habits. And then those habits, I think, set up for an ability for us to hold the guys accountable. And I know with the portal, everybody's transferring and the sport can get dysfunctional. But the thing that still leads to success is some accountability, some standards. People know what you expect from them, and then they know that you love them, so they're allowing you to coach them. So what I expect from this year is that the group we bring in is going to let us coach them. And then what I expect from the staff is that the staff's actually going to do that. And we're not going to baby them. We're not going to avoid conflict. We're going to expect great things. And then if you can establish that in your summer, then in the fall, you can set some goals. And obviously our goal is to make the tournament and to win, and we want to win the league. And those things are great. But I want the guys to decide that with us after we've gone through a really hard summer together. We've sweat for a little bit and we're bought into the same things. And so I can throw out some goals to you today that'll sound really fantastic, but the main thing is until we're together and we establish our identity, then you'd be skipping steps. So I want our identity to come true. And you listed some things in that identity. So JJ, you're a really good listener. I appreciate that about you. But the pace at which we'll play, the speed at which we play on offense, and then the aggression we play on defense, it's going to feel a certain way when you play against us. And until we get to the point where it feels that way in practice, then we're going to put everything else aside. We've got to get to that point where it feels almost aggressive and scary to be against us.
Really love the confidence, Coach. After the first year, it's going to be very important to maintain success for the long term, getting a lot of support from the community and alumni as well. In what ways do you intend to engage with the community and alumni to keep garnering support for the program and to enhance recruiting efforts?
Yeah, so I mean, last night we did an NIL event at the Haggerty Garage, and we had a great turnout. JJ was there along with other people. We've done a couple of those. I've done a couple podcasts. Everybody who asks for me to come on, I've said yes to. Anytime I can engage somebody in the community, the answer up to this point has always been yes. I think my staff has been in articles from the AP all the way down to Miami. We're trying to do the best we can to engage people in a really positive way. And at the end of the day, the thing that's going to sustain us more than anything is winning. Okay, so if we win and we treat people the right way and we say yes to do things like this and we include you in the ride, everyone's going to be pleased. If you do all the right things by people and you still lose, you know that sports is not going to reward that. I could be the nicest guy in the world and you're still going to have to win. So I think we've been in the middle of a really difficult roster rebuild, and people have been very gracious to give us the time to get the right team together. And every time we've had a chance to go in public and speak or do something like this, we've said yes. But when the roster is done, our efforts in this regard are just going to go up more because we want the fans. One of the reasons we chose this place is not only because they chose us, but because it sells out every game. So people care. And if people care about us, we're going to care back to them, and that'll be a reciprocal relationship. And hopefully by the time we build this relationship with the NIL and the fundraising and doing podcasts with people like you that love and support us, the coolest thing is going to be next fall when the students come on campus and I get to see the flamingos and the dancing and everything else that we do at games that causes to be such a great home environment. So I don't know if we're going to start setting off fireworks like a Serbian game. I don't know what they're going to let us do in that building legally, but if we can think of something that makes it even crazier, we're going to do it. And so the fan experience is the cherry on the sundae when it comes to FAU. And we'll get the roster in place and then we'll start engaging everybody even more. But we're really thankful for the grace that people have shown us as we're trying to build this roster. We'll never have to sign 10 guys again in a spring. I really believe that. So we'll put this one in place and then we'll just get building from there. But people have been great to us. And one of the ways we're going to reciprocate that is just always say yes. And that's what I'm doing with you guys right now. So we're just going to keep doing that.
The motto in the Dusty May era was serve and compete, and you said you liked that, but you wanted to add on to it with serve, compete, and love. Could you just elaborate what you mean with the love part of it in that new motto that FAU is going to have in the era under you?
Yeah, I think we'll probably really pick our mottos this June when the guys are on campus. But the love piece is if you just think about the staff that I put together. I mean, I coached Isaiah, and the reason he left Adam Silver and the NBA to come down to FAU is some because of FAU, but a lot because he and I love each other. You know, AD left the Suns to run the defense and help us with a whole bunch of things. But one of the reasons he did that is because he's one of my best friends and we love each other. And this cool thing about Gonzaga and Baylor's culture is it's not weird when you tell a player on your team you love them. And then you get to the point where they actually say, love you too, coach. And even though NIL is happening and the culture is changing and this is becoming more and more a business, somewhere inside of that business is still 18 to 22-year-old young men. And we got into college coaching to make a difference in people's lives. And if we can have that kind of love amongst each other, then they're going to learn to love the community well and the fans better. And so I just think love's a powerful word. It's one that's forgotten too much nowadays. And it's just really important for players to understand that their coaches love them and that when we get on them, it's not because we're mad at them. It's because we believe in them. And I think that's part of the culture we're going to build this summer. So I don't know if that's going to be the slogan for sure, but I know love's going to be part of it.
Coach, I guess you're kind of used to this by now with the amount of podcasts that you mentioned you've done. And you'd sort of mentioned the flamingo thing. And now I'm sort of imagining you in one of the flamingo costumes. I guess what would it take for that to happen? Is there sort of a guideline to what it would take for you to pop on one of the flamingo suits, after a game or during an event?
I mean, I don't know that it would take much. Let's say we can work something like that out in the future. I don't even know where you buy one of those. Like, I don't want to promise. Like, I don't even know how to find one. But Kevin, I get the sense that you're going to find me one in my size here shortly and call me on my bluff. So,
hey, Coach, if you give me your size, I will find one for you. Don't worry about that.
Well, I think you cover Coach Tang, don't you, a little bit?
Yeah, I do. I guess that's the day job.
Yeah. Well, your night job, I guess, is FAU. Your day job is Coach Tang in Kansas State. So if he hears this, my guess is that he's going to send you my size here shortly, and he's going to make sure I end up in a flamingo suit. But, I can't wait to see the fans. I mean, people have just been bragging about it over and over and over again. And whenever we do our kind of version of Midnight Madness next spring or next fall, and I walk into the fans for the first time and I just see those students, my guess is it's probably not going to take much for me to support them the way they support us. So I'm looking forward to that.
Coach, I guess thanks for coming on. Thanks for hopping on for a couple of minutes during, I guess, one of the most stressful periods of your life and, of the life of the head coach trying to build a roster. So, Coach, appreciate it a bunch for hopping on. And I think I speak for everyone on this podcast for saying go Owls. And, I hope the flamingo suit is worn during a good time.
I can see you spent 30 minutes with me just to convince me to do one thing. So I see your goal here. And I'll say this, it's certainly difficult, but you probably heard this before. If you're coaching basketball for a living, you never worked a day in your life. And just because something difficult doesn't mean it's not great. And what we're doing here is great. It's a complete privilege to do it. And our staff is loving every second of it. And I just appreciate all the support that you guys give FAU, and just keep doing it. And let's build this thing together. And when you say go Owls, I mean that from all my heart. So I appreciate you guys today. Thanks for having me on.
And London, and the only way we know how, go Owls.
Go Owls.